Hello, everyone. We're back here at the sessions at a distance. And what I love about this is that we have a chance to offer to the world information that is extremely helpful to musicians. The sessions has always been about trying to bring the business side to a higher level so artists can really earn what is fair and due to them from their great talent and their great skill. So this organization that I want to bring to you right now is an incredible organization based in the UK. IAFAR is an organization that is the Independent Alliance for Artists' Rights. So this organization is going to help you out. I want you to sign up on their website. We'll give you all the information. But I first want to introduce Naomi Asher. Would you please, Naomi, explain a little bit about the idea and what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Naomi. I am a neighboring rights representative. I'm Vice President of International Neighboring Rights at Sony ATV. I've been doing neighboring rights for about 10, 11 years. And a few years ago, I got incredibly frustrated about a few issues that we had. And I approached Anne, and we, agreed that, we needed a neutral organization, something like the NMPA would be for the neighboring rights side, where we could advocate for issues that were income stream-wide issues, and also really provide a place for education, because so many people have absolutely no idea what neighboring rights are and don't really know how to maximize that income. And we felt it'd be really important to have a neutral organization where we could advocate for the change that we needed and be able to educate people as to what this income stream is, how they can maximize their income, where they should be earning money, where they aren't going to earn money, and really just provide a safe sort of community for people, anybody who is in this space, in this income stream. And just to really quickly pinpoint, neighboring rights is a royalty that anybody who makes an audible contribution on a sound recording receives. So it doesn't matter whether you play the triangle, the trombone, you're the lead singer, if you just walk in and scream, if that's picked up on the recording. I mean, in Pink Floyd's The Wall, the guy who yells, "You can't have any pudding if you don't eat your meat," that is an audible contribution and is payable. So it's anybody who makes an audible contribution on a recording, and the rights holder, whoever owns the recording as well, are the people who are paid neighboring rights. You earn neighboring rights outside of the US from terrestrial radio and television, broadcast income, and public performance. So any venue that has to get a license to play music in public has to pay an equal royalty to the sound recording as they do to the publishing. And that sound recording money is what goes on neighboring rights. So that's really, really brief as to, what this income stream is. But that's why we set up IAFAR, was to help people learn what this income stream is and really start to fight for some of the issues that we have.
Boy, Naomi, thank you so much. And just what I've seen about IAFAR, it's amazing that the amount of people that you have helped and the potential of the tens of millions of dollars that's available, that's going to even help more people, which is why the importance of what you're doing is so powerful. I'm going to now turn this over to Anne Tausis. Anne, since Naomi had mentioned that she had contacted you, would you please fill us in your perspective here?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I've been working in neighboring rights for nearly 8 years. So in my day job, I'm CEO of Cobalt Neighboring Rights. I come from a publishing background, worked in publishing for 20 plus years. And, in publishing, there's lots of working groups. Publishers work together with collection rights organizations to make things better. They work really well together. And I've been part of sort of that work on the publishing side. Then I started working in neighboring rights, and there was nothing like that, The collection societies were not keen to even talk to agents. They were kind of just like those people who are stealing our money, basically, although we represent artists and musicians and getting their money. So I was really happy when Naomi contacted me and wanted to do something together and sort of working on an organization that is equivalent of the music publishers associations, but then to deal with neighboring rights. So that's how that came about. And we've been only in existence for exactly 2 years now. So I think we've managed to do a lot in the 2 years. And as Naomi mentioned, education is a big, big part of what we do. There are people who've been in the industry for many, many years who actually don't realize that there is the neighboring rights for them to collect. And there's this misconception that if you're American, you won't earn any neighboring rights. Well, you actually do. There's a handful of countries that pays everyone. So people need to be aware of that so they can go out and claim what's, money that they've already earned.
Well, Ann, thank you so much. And this really kind of starts to clarify. So as a non-for-profit, this is about educating these artists to what is available to them and to understand that this is a global issue, that no matter where you live, there's a potential for you to be able to make money that is clearly and legally due to you.
That's correct, yeah. It's always been about record sales. Streaming is, of course, still very, very big. And I think in the past, people haven't really paid much attention to neighboring rights because in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that much money. And of course, when record sales and the mechanical side has sort of dropped, then people start looking at other income streams, and people have kind of, it's clocked with them that neighboring rights is quite a lucrative business, you know. And I think, you know, if we always give the example that a session musician who's been on a number of recordings would earn an equivalent amount to you know, a number one featured recording artist. You know, there is definitely a lot of money to be had there. So you should be aware that it's available for you to claim, and you need to sort of know how to go about doing that.
Well, we'll get more into the specifics for sure, but this is extremely exciting. I'm going to now turn this over to Stacy. Stacy Haber, business and legal part of what's happening. Can you fill us in kind of what your perspective is?
Yeah, I'm the lawyer of the bunch. So whenever we need something done from a legal point of view, I draft it. Very heavy on the education part. I teach people, first of all, the difference between the P in the circle and the C in the circle. I mean, we really have to go back to basics when we're educating so that they understand this is for performers, musicians, audible contributors, not writers, not publishers. Mm-hmm. Once they understand the basics of the rights, then we can go forward and teach them about the specific revenue stream of neighboring rights. Things that I have done for IAFAR recently have been getting us observer status with WIPO. So currently, Ann, Naomi, and I attend the Geneva Conventions every day this week. We're also lobbying to be part of the IPD, so we have access to that, and we're submitting evidence for the UK IPO so that we can get better transparency. A lot of the advocacy and education, my bag.
I must tell you, I'm impressed and I'm inspired by the efforts of what you put together. And this message that is being delivered now is really important. And this is going to help a lot of musicians globally for sure. So thank you so much. I'm going to now go over to Dennis. Dennis Draith, if you would please fill us in on how you fit into this puzzle.
You bet. I'm the chairman of Transparent Entertainment Group. We're also an agency, and we're involved in IAFAR. I think what's really important to point out here is you'll see that there's a lot of us who would normally be viewed as somewhat competitors. We each of us represent clients. We sort of are competitors with each other, but we're also colleagues. I think what's important to notice is I spent most of my life as a session musician, orchestrator, conductor, before I ran the AF and SAG-AFTRA fund. And what I realized during that whole time is every other composer, orchestrator, conductor was a competitor of mine, but they're also my friends and colleagues. And they're the people who not only did I compete with, they're the ones who got me jobs. And IAFAR was formed much the same way. A group of colleagues, we saw a common interest, and we worked together to help each other. Actually, the whole idea is to make this better for performers. So even though we might be in competition to gain clients, we each find that we have common interests. We work together. We share information. It's amazing to work with a group of people where rather than hide the secrets we each develop, because we each have a different perspective on the business. Coming from the U.S., I have a different perspective on how to work with it to get the royalties freed up and flowing from the U.S. My colleagues in other parts of the world have perspectives on their territories. And so the whole point of this is to actually educate ourselves, because once the group educates ourselves, we're able to educate all the performers out there about how to best collect the money for them. The whole point here is how to make performers make more money. That's the whole point of this.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. In this process, Dennis, I'm impressed so much with what's happening with all this here. Now, what we have is this next gentleman I want to introduce is probably a great example of what IAFAR is about. A legend among legends. Listen, I've known Jim for years. I had the chance to interview him for the Sessions panel. He's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant musician, and he's an incredibly inspiring artist that has played on thousands of recordings. So would everyone please welcome Mr. Jim Keltner.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Sit down, everybody, please. When Naomi came into my life, I just suddenly, started getting big checks. And I mean, I just want to be as simple as I can about this. I can't, there's no other way to explain it. I was happy with PPL, I think it was, right? It was, they called it pound money, a little $300 check, $600 check was great. And then suddenly those $600 checks became $6,000 checks. With the royalties that I have in place, as a musician, to add that to all of that was awesome. I told Naomi, I said, well, I should tell other people about this, right? Other musicians? She said, absolutely. It's a life changer, and especially at a time like this, with this pandemic. I haven't worked, for instance, I did my first and only session in 7 months. Well, no, it's been 8 months now, I guess. If I didn't have all these things in place, especially this particular little royalty, if I didn't have that in place, it could be rough. I don't know how other guys are getting along, other musicians are getting along, with not being able to work this long. I feel for everybody out there. A lot of artists are hurting, I'm sure. So all the more reason to have something like this in place, to have a royalty that you deserve. It's all about the music that you've been a part of. For me, being at my age, and having started when I was just a kid, it's awesome to have a royalty like this. I never knew anything like this existed. It's all based upon, records that I've played on. Big ones, little ones, doesn't matter. It's performance, right? I always thought it was really cool when I started getting publishing checks. But this one dwarfs everything for me. I'm not known as a writer. I'm not a prolific writer, but I have played on records.
Boy, Jim, that's a great start. I want to turn it to Stacy. You have a comment.
I do. I think the biggest misconception here for people is that they have to do something other than register their recordings, because the money is earned without you doing anything. You could have earned it already as a performer or a rights holder. For instance, people who are putting out their own music don't know that they're a rights holder. They don't know they have to register as the label as well as the performer. And in most countries, until the rights holder registers the recording, the performer never gets paid. So that's two important pieces of information that people don't know, even if they've heard of Sound Exchange or PPL. You have to register as the rights holder, and you've already earned the money. Just go collect it.
So Naomi, having worked with Jim and going through all this here, just talk a little bit about the process.
You have in this income stream, you have CMOs, collection management organizations. And, there's a lot that people really have to navigate in this income stream. And, it's all very well and good to say, okay, well, I'm just going to become a member of this one organization for the world. But then you often get angry and be like, well, why aren't I earning any money? In somebody like Jim's case, the potential is so much greater than what, just, okay, I'm just going to register and kind of let it happen, but people don't really understand. But then there's also times on the flip side where people are like, I should be getting loads of money. And because this income stream is quite complicated, where they would earn money for their contributions, maybe don't pay them because of qualifications, either the Rome Convention issues in terms of American performers being at a slight disadvantage, or they're not getting airplay in that country. So there's a lot of things, and then they get frustrated and they want to know why. And there's really no resource for anybody to explain it to them. And that's one of the things that we do.
If you would, explain the Rome Convention. Just explain a little bit more about that as far as what went down with that.
Well, in 1961, there was a treaty, the Rome Convention Treaty, that was signed by quite a lot of countries, not the U.S., which essentially made this sound recording income payable to, performers and rights holders on that side. I can't get more legal than that. That would probably be Stacy. But the people who are not signatories to that essentially, and some signed, but with reservations, Australia, for instance. So, if you didn't sign or if you have reservations, you can be considered non-qualifying. And then every country has instituted these, the provisions of the Rome Convention Treaty differently. So some countries like France and the Netherlands will they'll pay everybody on a recording, but only if that recording is qualifying, if that recording has been done in a Rome Convention signatory country. Some countries like the UK, they'll only pay a non-qualifying performer for digital or satellite recordings, but they'll pay if the track was recorded in a Rome Convention country, because then it's qualifying. Some people go to Canada or Mexico to record their track because then they've recorded in a Rome Convention country and therefore it's qualifying. There's a lot of different ins and outs with regards to the Rome Convention, which make things more or less qualifying. I mean, Jim's very lucky. He's performed with a ton of British artists, all the Beatles, all the Stones. A lot of those are qualifying recordings.
Well, how interesting. Dennis.
Yeah, I just want to say what Naomi's talked about is so important. I think people need to understand the significance of the U.S. not signing the Rome Convention. What this meant up until the very late 90s and early 2000s is that U.S. musicians could not receive anything for the performance of their recordings in Europe and Asia. And as we know, American recordings probably comprise the largest catalog of recorded music, popular recorded music at least. And yet, because the U.S. hadn't done this, we couldn't collect. Now, it's interesting, when you look at the countries that aren't signed to the Rome Convention, we had a president, George W. Bush, used to talk about the axis of evil. And he talked about countries that were Iraq, Iran, North Korea. These are the countries that hadn't signed onto the Rome Convention country. And the U.S. was one of those countries and still is one of those countries. Now, we had some changes in the late 1990s. I actually had the privilege and pleasure of working on the Audio Home Recording Act and the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And those are the first changes in copyright law in the U.S. history that actually provided performers with protection. So it gave copyright owners and performers a very, very limited protection. It gave us subscription services, webcasting, and private home copying protection. Now, the significance of that was that made it possible for us to go to the foreign CMOs and foreign societies and begin to get some collections, because for the first time we had actually a reciprocal agreement. We actually had some royalties and we could trade those off. Now, some societies were open. We could say, for example, we might have a private copy, but they don't have that, but they'd pay a certain broadcast rate. So it enabled a little bit of horse trading. Some people say, what do you get paid for? When Naomi says, well, it depends and it's complicated, she is so right, because it really varies from territory to territory. But for the first time, the U.S. actually had those rights, and it gave us the ability to go collect for people like Jim in foreign territories. Not only was there money available for him for the first time for subscription service performances and webcasting, but now we could actually go to foreign territories and begin to collect some of the things, and at least the portions of the recordings that are like a covered portion of that. So it just gets very complicated. But I got to say that the important thing for any of the Americans listening to this is it's so important to push your Congress to change the legislation. We absolutely need to have protection for terrestrial radio in this country so we can go collect those performances around the world. And maybe we can talk a little bit about what's called national treatment, which is something that IAFAR has been pushing for a great deal.
Stacy.
If I could just explain a little bit of the background. The U.S. could not sign the Rome Treaty because they weren't paying royalties on terrestrial radio. The regular AM/FM stations. That was a big barrier. They couldn't agree to pay the rest of the world royalties because they weren't paying royalties in the U.S. So that was a barrier to their entry to that treaty. Having said that, they have had 50 years to change the law and do the right thing, and they haven't done it.
So let me ask this question. How do we get that to happen?
I think that's the point, is like what's happened in this country is we've had the lobbyists working for the major broadcasters have pushed very, very hard. They don't want to pay the royalties. They don't want to pay extra money. Just so we're clear, when a song is played on the radio in the U.S., the publisher and the songwriters make a royalty. The rest of the world, the performers also make a royalty. So what happens is not only does the songwriter and the publisher of that song make money, but the performers and the rights holders make money. And that's not true in the US. And the reason it's not true is exactly that. The broadcast industry has lobbied very, very hard. They have very deep pockets, and they're able to make campaign contributions and influence legislation to a much greater degree. Now, the last few years, we've built coalitions with record companies and performers, the performance unions, NARAS, people who do the Grammys, have all worked together in big coalitions to try to get record producers, rights holders, musicians, all the kind of same rights that everybody else has. So what we can do is we can lobby and we can fight the broadcasters. It's important that we really point this out, that a fair share must be paid. Now, I think I can't leave this conversation without saying that for many years, we've had a situation where the people who made and who actually distributed product, for example, were the ones who made the most amount of money. The people who actually create the product have been at the bottom end, at the very end of this chain forever. So the ones who make the music actually make the least amount of money. Now, I think part of what we wanted to do here with this group is we need to change that. We need to make it so that the people who are actually the creators, the ones who invent, the people who actually, it's their creative processes that actually create these things. And it's not just the songwriter or the lead singer. I would say, how many hit records would not be a hit record without somebody like Jim Keltner playing that groove that's infectious, without James Jamerson playing a bass line on a Motown record that everybody knows that. All the little musical hooks that go into making a hit record, those are the things that people need to be compensated for, so they can continue to do that. Those records are making money, they're being broadcast, they're making money for people every day. And our goal is to make sure that performers get a fair share of that.
Very well said. Now, Naomi, we talked about the great Hal Blaine, who, the later parts of his life, received a check and was extremely, astonished that going back to the 60s. So this goes back how far?
It's either January 1st, 1963 or January 1st, 1964, and I can't remember at the moment which one. But it's 1963 or 1964 is how far you can go back. That's actually recently been extended. I mean, that is essentially an extended period as well, because I think it's 70 years it was 50 years and it's been extended to 70. I think in most of the world now. So there's sort of a new 20-year period in there. Most countries can only backdate sort of up to 5-6 years. So if you recorded something in 1965, you're going to get paid for any airplay that has happened in the last 5-6 years. But, obviously you're not going to get paid for airplay that happened in 1965. But, so just to make that distinction. But yeah, I mean, any recording that you've played on from about 1963 or 1964 onwards, and the other thing is there are a lot of, remasters of recordings that, have gotten re-released after that date, and those are payable. So if you recorded something with Frank Sinatra in the 50s and it was remastered in 1996, then, that is something that you'll get paid for.
Any new recordings you need to claim for. So it's not going to be automatically because you did that one recording that is going to sort of multiply onto any re-releases. Each release needs to be claimed for with the collection societies around the world to get these.
So for a musician to get involved in this, he goes to ifar.co.uk, ifar.co.uk, and registers and signs on, and then you can kind of guide them along the way, as Stacey, you mentioned, to educate them on what they need to prepare and present for them to tap into this. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
all of the videos of our seminars are in the member section. So anything, even if you attended a seminar and you need a refresher course, the videos are there. There's all the frequently asked questions, and you also get access to us. You also get references to both member organizations and representatives, and I will give you a list of non-member representatives so that it's unbiased and you can make your own decisions. I won't tell you who to go with. I will tell you who to investigate and then make your own decisions.
This sounds like a pretty good deal, Jim. I can see us joining on and getting some of Stacey's time.
Yeah, no
really
kidding.
kind of pushing this as far as we can go. This is fantastic. Let me
Yeah.
ask Ann this question. Ann, you got together with Naomi, you put together this idea that you had. The cause and the purpose of what you're doing is so honorable of you all to put your time and effort into this here. What was the initial mission statement that you were looking for when you first started?
Well, I mean, for me, a lot of it had to do with education, because coming into neighboring rights and realizing how little people knew about it, and just taken from my own background. So I'm from Sweden. My dad was a musician. He was typically one of those who just, he didn't make sure that he was credited when he was on recordings. He's given up songwriter royalties and all of that. And then, as he then stopped performing and working in the music industry, and he worked for the Swedish ASCAP, and he realized that, I was 17 when I started out. I didn't care, I should have made more effort to kind of get my credits. Then he went from there and started working for the Swedish PPL. And he was like, I can't believe it. There's all these recordings that I'm on, and there's no records of them anywhere. So he started collating then when he realized, that it was a big income stream, and made sure that then he went to all his friends and said, you need to make sure that you're registered. And just what Stacey said as well, record companies who didn't actually initially register the recording, they had to go back to the record companies, the labels, to say that you need to submit the recording so we can claim. So all of that, I've seen it sort of happening live. And I do apologize, my dog is barking. And
Thank God you said it was your dog. I thought it might have been one of the children. That's fantastic.
No, they're too old to be barking. Right. So, I saw that all firsthand. So for me, growing up and sort of then being in this industry myself, that's something that I took away. And it's so important to make sure that, you are protected and you are getting paid for the work that you've done. That kind of really, has stayed with me. And I just think, to help people to get that money, it's the best thing. If you can help someone and they get that check and it's like, wow, this kind of has changed my life, that's the best thing you can do.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So let me ask this question. In closing, I'm going to go down to each one of you, and I want you to kind of give a little summary of how you think we can inspire people to get involved. This really should be taught as a course in every music university and every conservatory on this planet. Every artist can be involved with this, and every artist can have a piece of a part of their own talent that can reward them financially in not only crazy times like we're experiencing right now, but just in the course of their lives. This is really incredible. Let me start with Dennis. Dennis, what would you say in closing that we can give advice to these young students that are watching?
Well, it's amazing because we ask a lot of people about neighboring rights. Now, everybody knows about publishing and writers, but they don't know about neighboring rights. So what's important is that people register with something. Either they sign up with an agent, or they're at least aware of it. In the U.S., it's a little bit easier. If you're a featured artist, you need to be signed at least with Sound Exchange. If you're a non-featured performer, you don't need to sign up with anybody. The AFM and SAG-AFTRA Fund will find you and pay you if you're on what's called a surveyed recording. So they have a playlist. Not every recording that's released, but they research down to about 20,000 recordings a year. And if you're on those recordings, you'll be attached to that. Now, the problem is that they don't necessarily know where every one of those people are. Even though it says AFM and SAG-AFTRA Fund, you do not have to be a union member. Their mission is, and their kind of obligation under the copyright law is to pay union and non-union performers alike. So oftentimes the non-union performers, somebody will know that they're on a recording, but they don't know where to find them. And so their name winds up on a unclaimed royalties list. And the amount of black box money that's out there for unclaimed royalties worldwide is phenomenal. It's astronomical. I can't tell you how many. It's like, it is huge. And there are so many, there's so much money waiting to be paid to people. So if you are a non-featured performer, a background singer, a session musician, I urge you to go to the AFM and SAG-AFTRA fund. You go to their website and look at the unclaimed royalties. And you can also contact an agent. Your agent will help you find these things, and better yet, your agent will know how to register you appropriately. They'll know how to, which societies are best to register you with, how to deal with that, and if you're a rights holder, they can help with that. So the point of this is to get your rights registered and become registered as a performer. If you don't sign up someplace, you're generally not going to get paid, with the exception of the AFM SAG-AFTRA fund, which you may not get paid for if they don't know how to find you.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Stacey, what would you say to this young generation in trying to prepare them for the advantages of what you're all offering?
I would say, dare me. Just come to me and dare me to show you the money, because I will.
Show her the money. I love that. That's fantastic. She'll show you the money. Anne, what would you say?
You need to be aware. If you know that there's that thing you need to do, go and do it. Naomi touched on it before. It is really complicated. Neighbouring rights is nothing like publishing, where you have the same share of the song wherever it's being played in the world. In neighbouring rights, it's a different share depending on which country it's actually performed in. You need to know, first of all, that there's a right, then you need to go and do something about it. That's the first thing. And then you need to make sure that there is some way of maximizing that income for you as well. We had the example here of being a direct member with PPL, which wasn't that successful until Naomi stepped in and sort of did the thorough work. That could be the difference, between the fairly small check and the big check. So do your homework.
Fantastic. Naomi, what would you say to this next generation?
Support us, join IAFAR. We're a member-based organization. We survive on member dues. Now, saying that, we are forming a sister company, which is going to be a US-based company. It's called IAFAR Education. It is not a member organization, but it is going to be doing exactly what you were talking about with being in schools and music programs and everything. That's going to be a 501c3 charity. So we are going to be out there looking for donors, and then we're going to be out there bugging every music school in the country to try and get electives and courses in to teach people about this income stream. Join, ask us questions. We'll direct you in the right direction, because, it can be the difference between, not really knowing that this exists and suddenly being able to buy a new car.
I'm sure that will give many musicians the spark that they need to get involved, for sure. Jim Keltner, what would you say to this young generation from what your experiences are and all the recordings that you've done, and now having experienced what this entire neighboring rights door has opened up for you? What would you say to this next generation?
Man, I would say to this next generation, I hope you were just listening to these people talk. It's beautiful. It's just so simple, and yet it's probably the most complicated thing in the royalty business. That's for sure. These people have it down. They've discovered how to do it, and all you have to do, just like they've all said, go get interested. Go find out. Go talk to somebody. And maybe also look at your past work and maybe take notes and stuff. I was fortunate that I kept a book all my life, from October 1st of 1960. I have every gig, every dollar I ever made. My mom showed me how to do that. It's one thing for somebody like me to tell my friends, they get really excited, but to get a whole massive group of people, you're gonna have to get this out there. Yeah. I think this is really good. That's all I can say.
Point well taken, Jim. I don't think you can get any better endorsement for what IAFAR is doing than from Jim Keltner. I mean, that pretty much is the gavel that hits the desk, that states the importance of what you're doing, and the honorable effort that you're all putting into this here. This is so well needed. And we will put this on the sessions at a distance. We will put this all throughout our social media so the word gets out. And I think it's going to start that way virally, where people are talking about it and discussing it. And as musicians talk more about it, and with this kind of exposure, we hope that this will be the beginning. So I want everyone to go to iafar.co.uk, iafar.co.uk, and register, become a member, sign up, and being part of what something is really, this is now at the beginning stage of what I think will be a fantastic tsunami for the music industry.
Revolution!
Everyone, John, I thank you all so much for being a part of the sessions at a distance, and with word getting out, I think you are a part of now making a huge difference. For that, I thank you all so very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much.
Dom Famularo here, the Sessions panel. This is so exciting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Click the subscribe button to be a part of what we're doing. The views help us tremendously. All of your comments, we read them and react to them. This is incredible. The support you're giving us is great. The Sessions panel. We'll see you real soon.